Okay, welcome. We'll get this started. Let's see. Yeah, we're here at MTech in Lehigh, and want to thank MTech for letting us host here. It's great facility. We enjoy it. And it's pretty central too. We like the location being North Utah County, so we can pull a few people down in from Salt Lake County. And I'm a part-time instructor here, and they have a web development course that's about 9 months long, and yeah, it's a glorified boot camp. It's a trade school is what MTech is, and they're heavily funded by the state to meet the hiring demands of the state of Utah. And yeah, my daughter has a cosmetology certificate from here, and then went in and got certified, and she's got a studio in South Jordan. And my son went through the automotive program, and he works right down here at Ken Garf Ford off the freeway in American Fork. Just loving what they do. And then also a lot of students will go on from the programs here into university, and they've been they have a word for it, but they've been matching up the coursework with the university coursework to make sure, see how many credits these students can get if they do transfer to university, and so it's great programs here. I think Ionic, they're sponsoring. They pay for Meetup.com for us, and then Simply Best is my consulting company. Just me. I just do a little bit on the side because I work 9 to 5, and but Simply Best is sponsoring the food, and then I thank the other hosts for always helping to get this organized. We'll go around, introduce everybody, and we'll end with you. That was Corey presenting last time, but if you don't mind, I'm gonna point this camera around the room and have everyone introduce yourself. And what we want to do is, for this, it's like a stand-up meeting, but start with who you are and what you've been working on, what's something you're going to be working on. So it helps with some accountability. It gives you some motivation if there's something on the side that you want to do, or something in your 9 to 5 job that you want to figure out how to do. Just mention those kind of things, and and then at the end of the presentation, we'll have open time to answer questions and specifically about the topics of this, but also mobile web development, hybrid development, and PWAs and all that stuff. All those topics, we'll cover all those.
Is it possible not to be on the camera?
Yeah, you bet. All right, we'll come around to Ben. All right, I've got to tip this a little bit here. Okay, there you go.
I'm Ben Callahan. I'm a lead software engineer over at Edigy, a financial technologies company just up the road from here. I've been spending a lot of time learning about computer networking. I've been spending a lot of time in the TCP/IP stack. I've learned way more about TLS than I ever wanted to know. But when you're dealing with money, there's no cost is too great for security.
All right.
My name is Thomas Ford. I actually work with Brett, and he invited me to come here. Lately, I've been trying to learn some cloud, like AWS. I've been trying to learn Terraform for EKS deployment.
Great. All right.
My name is Sarah Diggs. I am currently unemployed, so working on some of my side projects now become full-time projects. The one that I'm currently working on is for Windows servers managers. So with Active Directory, being able to manage your GPO objects better. that's kind of redundant. Your GPOs, because GPOs is group policy objects. So I just basically said group policy objects. It's a full stack kind of application with
So my name is Alfie Madsen, and I'm currently working for a company called Aquafero, helping write tools for doing analysis on watersheds and other water things. And I'm working on a personal project with, well, the ultimate goal is to do something with 3D graphics and quaternions. But currently I'm trying to, since I want to do some of this, I'm kind of working on some libraries towards that direction.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Trey Wallace. I just got a new job, so I'm really happy. I'm just working for an engineering firm as a software engineer. And I guess in my personal time, I just have been kind of researching AI. So I'm kind of learned to what extent you should use AI in your project. So it's kind of like you want to solve it as much as possible with just code, and then for that really difficult piece, AI can be kind of your special tool to solve that problem. So I find it pretty interesting. I kind of want to try out some cloud host that has like some GPUs, maybe throw like $100 at it. So that's probably the next thing I'm going to do, just to kind of play around with it. So.
Yeah, cool.
My name is Corey MacArthur. I'm a kind of designer, developer, founder of a couple companies. The current one I'm working on is our tributes. We make little QR codes that you can stick on a headstone, and then you can scan it, and it's a website that helps you learn about that person. And then you can also like write comments and share stories and tributes about that person, so it really helps the grieving person handle that, cope with it. And so one of the things I want to work on is actually selling our product. Right now it's on Amazon, but we want to be able to sell it directly on our website. So somehow connecting our website purchases to like a fulfilled by Amazon flow. So that's my next endeavor I got to dig into.
All right, if you want to just unmute yours and start your introduction, your presentation.
So if I unmute this, do I get an echo now? We're good? Okay. Can you hear it? Because I don't know. I think my mic is off. Can you tell?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, see. So I took my speaker off. That's what it is. Okay. So that's good. Yeah, my name's Brett Palmer. I'm a software developer by trade. Graduated in engineering years ago, but I don't do any electrical engineering. Met taught at Novell, so we're old Novell guys. So mostly Java developer, and I work for myself, so I have my consulting business, and I'm a vendor for the state of Utah as well, where I place other consultants in projects with the state. So I've currently been in the state for about 15 years, working on helping them migrate their large eligibility system to the cloud and working on open source software. So I do a lot of DevOps type stuff, but I've been playing in Angular for a number of years. I don't do it full time, but it's something I've always enjoyed. I've been mostly a backend developer my whole career, so I like to kind of work on the front end. And this is what we'll talk about today is some technologies that I've used in a mobile app that I've been working on for a long time. So it's one of those you do part-time and pick it up, but we're making progress and we're getting there. It's actually a business app, so it's not really a sexy app, but it's integrates with a CRM package for communicating with customers, and it integrates with Intuit QuickBooks. So it's a lot of manual processes that we currently have. My wife runs a landscaping company, so a lot of paper manual processes. So I've always promised her I'll build this app. Of course, that's kind of a sensitive topic too, because it's, hey, where's my app, kind of thing. So but we're still working on it. So making progress. So I like doing these presentations because it kind of pushes me to get things going. I always find out, oh, it's not quite as good as I thought it was. But, and I always like bouncing off ideas with the people here that do a lot of programming in this area anyway. So that we can just go ahead and start. All right, let's see. Okay, so we're going to talk. This is an Ionic app, but I wanted to bring up GraphQL. It's an API technology similar to REST, but it solves a different problem, and we'll talk about that. And I don't know, has anyone used GraphQL before? Okay, a little bit. Okay, I kind of picked it because I wanted to learn it. That's not always the best way to do it, but I find that's how you learn it, and then maybe you regret that you picked it, but that's how things go. It wouldn't be the first time that's happened to me. So like I said, I'm Brett Palmer. I also run a local, I'm one of the organizers for Salt Lake City DevOps Days, and we are having a meetup. I'll talk at the end of this in here, just before KubeCon. Conference that is in November as well. It's a big Kubernetes conference. You can find me on LinkedIn and have a website there. But LinkedIn is usually the best way to contact me. Okay, so GraphQL APIs introduction. We're going to talk about really why I was intrigued by it, its history a little bit. So GraphQL was created by Facebook in 2012, which in the internet years is, that's glacier years. That's a long time ago. So they created it to solve some specific problems. So I think it really came out when they had their first mobile app. Facebook was a mobile app. Facebook had hundreds and thousands of different APIs and apps that they all integrated with. And they also ran into problems with performance on mobile. So this is before we had really high speed mobile networks. So things were slow, and REST APIs didn't give them the flexibility that they needed. So we'll talk about that. So they continue to use it, and it was released in open source in 2015. If any of you program in React, you'll know Facebook's a big open source supporter. So they created the React framework as well. So it's a query language for APIs and runtime to fulfill queries with existing data. So really, you could have an API and you could talk to different data sources if you wanted to. So if you wanted to mesh a whole bunch of different data sources in one and have a common way to grab that, that's what made it, a pretty good solution for what they tried to do. And it was designed as an alternative to REST. But still say REST is probably more popular and more used, which we'll talk about a little bit more now. But at the time on mobile, REST just didn't give them quite the flexibility they had. So declarative data fetching, some of the characteristics, you declare up front the data you want. So like in REST API, there might be 100 fields in an API, but you only want 2 of them. In GraphQL, you can pick the 2 that you want. So it's kind of like a database doing a select statement, and you just pick the fields you want. Strongly typed schema. So I've come from a background of typed languages, so I really like strongly typed languages so that your IDE can do a lot of work for you. And then there's a single endpoint for multiple queries. So usually be like /GraphQL, just one monolithic endpoint that then you can ask different queries on. Okay, we kind of went over those. Okay, so some of the problems with REST APIs, overfetching and underfetching. So meaning you might have a REST API and it, like I mentioned, it might have 100 fields in it. So you're bringing all this data back. And then maybe there's some that only bring a few fields back. So what that really means is then you need to make multiple rounds to make different calls. So, well, I need to call this REST API to get this, and I need to call this REST API to get that. And you can see maybe in the early days of mobile, that was a problem, or it could cause slow issues, performance issues. And they have a pretty rigid structure, which can be a good thing, but it might not have the flexibility that you wanted. So if you wanted to blend a couple APIs together, that's what REST APIs didn't really give you that way to do it. And the other thing that is kind of a pain with REST APIs is versioning. So if you want to update your APIs, there really wasn't a way. If you have some live APIs, if you've gone to Amazon or others, they usually have to give a different path, like V1 or V2. There's not really a graceful way to say, here's the new API, right? So GraphQL solved these problems by allowing you to do efficient data fetching, meaning you can pick just what you want. So if you have a large database, has a lot of data, maybe you don't want to bring everything back in your list view. You just want to bring back a few elements. You don't have to bring everything back, and you can just bring the ID and the first name, last name, and then go back and fetch those later. You can get everything in a single request, so you can kind of batch things together. And like I mentioned, it's strongly typed schema, and it has flexibility without versioning. So it has has annotations that you can mark something as deprecated to warn people that it's going away. And you can create different resolvers to handle, if you have something new in the API that has a new formatting function, you can have a custom resolver that handles that appropriately so that doesn't break the old client and is available for the new client.
If anybody has any questions at all during the presentation,
Yeah.
just stop and ask.
And sorry, my glasses are only good for reading. I can't see anyone out there, so you'll have to wave your hands. You can do this, I guess. This is what I usually do in presentations.
How does GraphQL handle versioning? Like REST APIs, you normally have like a V1 in the URL. So if you do have data changes,
So like one is you can use annotations to deprecate things. You can do a custom resolver. So I can maybe show you how you do these resolvers. It has a query you can be created to support old and new fields. So if it came in and maybe you can pass in a flag or something with your resolver, then it says, oh, I want the first version, or here's my new one.
okay, so it'd be like through the flag in the query rather than like.
Yeah, then the path. Yeah. So all trade-offs, right? You still have to pass something in and say, so that'd be in your documentation of, hey, if you want this other field, include some other input as it's coming. Okay, here's some of the disadvantages. This is what we found as we implemented this. It's increased complexity on the server side. There's still overfetching and underfetching can still occur. So you have to kind of think it through. And I think a lot of people in the GraphQL starts off great, and then as they get complicated queries, they still run into performance issues. So now, like if you're bringing everything back, but maybe it's hitting 10 data sources, that's still a performance problem. Now you can probably improve that over from a mobile making 10 different queries to different data sources. You can do it all at one place, but that's a constant thing you're always looking at is how do I optimize that and cache that and things like that. Caching complexity is another issue. And I've just run into this today. So in GraphQL and the Apollo client library, it's a data store. So as you write things, it stores it. And sometimes you need to do a full refresh to get your updates back into to view it again. And I'm still kind of figuring that part out. Query performance issue, we talked about that. With complex queries, you need to spend a lot of time optimizing things if you really want them to be fast. And here's the point that I think is the biggest frustration for me where this application integrates with third-party APIs, and I haven't found any third-party APIs that use GraphQL. So now I have an app that has both GraphQL and REST APIs, and in hindsight, I probably wouldn't have made that choice. Now you could be a purist and put a GraphQL wrapper on front of it, but now you're writing kind of two APIs. To your front end's GraphQL, and then the back end you're writing a REST API to like QuickBooks or to the CRM. So
Does your front end access those REST APIs? I just kind of assumed the REST APIs would all be through the back end anyway.
they are, but so I think it was just easier that, hey, here's the API. You pass it to the middle tier, and it calls it directly. So we could have. I was talking with one of my developers about that too, and I think we both concluded it was probably not worth doing GraphQL. I don't know if it's really helped us that much, but it was cool to know. Yeah. So here's some examples, and my slide's going to be a little hard to read here. Okay, here we go. Okay, so REST API GET. So you'd have a REST GET, and in GraphQL it's called a query, and the syntax is like this. So it's a query, and you pass in, like if you want a specific user, this is an example of user, you pass in the ID, and then these fields are optional. You can just pick 1, 3, 10, and it will just bring back the information that you want. On a REST post, so if you want to do create a new user, you do a post. And so here's what the REST API would look like with posts with like a /users. And then you put it in the request body. And GraphQL, they call it a mutation. And your syntax is a mutation, and then you pass in the fields that you want to pass into the query.
So this object, are you putting that in the body of your request? Or how do you send that?
There is a GraphQL API Apollo client, and it looks a lot like this, where you just put it in almost just. I'm giving this example because they have like a Apollo playground where you can kind of like test the APIs out, kind of like Postman is. So your Angular code would look similar to this.
Similar to?
Well, that it would have this kind of syntax, so you put stuff.
You can't see your mouse on the screen.
Oh, you can't. You're right.
So hypothetically, on my front end, I'm creating a user, I have a form, and then once they fill out their information, I put a button that says create user, and then I would have something like on click. I'm not React user, I'm not sure exactly what it is. On click, and then sends post request. If I was using this API, like I would send information in a post request. How would you do that for GraphQL? Are you still using HTTP?
Yeah, it's still all going over HTTP, but instead of calling the post request, you're going to call, there's a GraphQL client, and you're going to pass in, you're going to grab the stuff from the form and then call this API and set that and call this mutation.
Okay, so you still send it to address, and you have that as an object in your body?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And is the input there that you just have is the name of the email, and then everything after that, is that what the mutation is going to return something? Is it going to return the ID and the name and the email?
Yeah, it can return. It returns what it just creates, or like it creates this ID, maybe that was generated from the create, and the name you passed in. So it's just what you already passed in.
To kind of elaborate a little bit more. So he's talking about like Apollo GraphQL. So there's kind of like these wrappers that wrap like the fetch call in the browser.
So essentially, I've made it like kind of made my own from scratch.
Yeah.
So it's just a fetch, and it has like an object as a query, and then that whole thing is like the value of the query field.
Okay.
So it's just a JSON object, and then when it goes to the server, it parses that, and then it determines what it needs to send back.
Okay.
But there's a lot of magic. Like they have like there's like a tree structure that they create to parse that, and so that's both on the front end, I believe, and the back end. But this, it's like a common language that they've kind of defined.
Okay.
Yeah. So this would be a put or a update or a patch is a mutation where you'd update the user. So similar to a create. And then a delete would be similar. So, and they like the Apollo client, I think that's one of the more popular ones, but there are other clients.
So the only thing that exists is a mutation or a query.
Yeah.
Right. So mutation is for creating, updating, or deleting, and then
A query is reading.
So some implementations have subscriptions, and those use WebSockets.
Oh yeah, there are those. So if you're like listening for something to update, there's a subscription. Yeah. So if it.
which would be still like a query, just a live query or something, right?
Yeah.
But it pushes it out. Like you subscribe. Tell me if this record gets updated versus fetching, polling to get the update. Yeah. Okay, so my application is the Ionic 7. It has a NestJS server backend, and that supports both REST APIs and GraphQL. I have a Mongo database on the back end, and as I mentioned, I use a combination of both REST and GraphQL. A lot of the main app uses, if there are own collections, we use GraphQL. If it's integrated, like the OAuth system that Nest came with is all REST based, and so we use that out of the box. So let's do a demo. I'm not sure the best way to do this on the screen here. Is it better just to share the whole screen?
Maybe screen mirror so we can see it.
Yeah, let's see where the display is.
Maybe you're just sharing the window right now.
Yeah. Hang on. That's not working. It's not really any better.
Navigate.
Where's the display here? Up there. Okay, let's see.
Then do that same thing. Right click on it and then just say mirror.
Okay, the mirror, there we go. That's, thanks. Okay. Okay, so here's the Ionic app. Here, we'll take this off here. So it's pretty basic. You log in. We have members or customers that we list, and we focus like we do work orders, and then we have some of these are screens we're just kind of playing with right now, but we integrate with QuickBooks. So I'm gonna. Oh, what's the UI? This is Ionic with Angular. So it's a web app. That's one of the reasons I like Angular is you can deal with web technologies. So, and then I just put this in the same there. So it looks kind of like a mobile phone, but you could also just have it be a PWA like this, which I don't know, that might be easier to demo. So let's go ahead. We'll create like a work order. So come in. I would create a work order. You select a member. Let's select David Roth here. Then we'll like create the order. Okay, and so this would be scheduled. So part of this is to integrate this schedule with like the CRM that would like text message the member that, hey, a service is coming, and give them a reminder. Then when they start the service, we'd start the service and we have items. Now this is the invoice part. So if we come in, we can add different services that we provide, and these are pulled in from QuickBooks initially. So if we were doing, gardening for a couple hours, we also have a service that supports English and Spanish because a lot of the workers speak Spanish, so they can write their order in Spanish, but we can translate it in English. We do use that using a Amazon service. Okay, so we've got these items here. We're going to head and complete it. It's done. Now, part of this on the invoicing, we don't want to just create an invoice. It kind of needs to go through like a project manager that understands what the work was done. So the idea is that we stage it and we'll go in and create an invoice. That's an existing invoice, but if we want to create like a new invoice, we could come in, select a member, and add an existing work order. So I think this is one I just created. Yeah, services, sprinkler heads, trimming. And then this is the invoice, and then we can submit it. Okay, so here are the invoices we have for David Roth. Now, right now, it's just in our own system. So it's in Mongo. It's an invoice. It hasn't been set to QuickBooks yet. So then a manager would come in, look at an invoice that's there. I think this is the one I just created. And then send that invoice to QuickBooks. I think that worked.
Yeah, the check mark went away. So does that mean like prevent you from sending it twice, I assume?
Yeah. Okay, so now let's go to QuickBooks. Oh, hang on, let's see. Oh, it did. So if we go, so QuickBooks Intuit has a developer sandbox that you can use. And so if you work with QuickBooks at all, this is their online QuickBooks, and they just give you like a free sandbox to test your APIs on. So if we go look at invoices, we should have a new, I don't know if this is the new one. No. I don't think that went through. Let's see. Let's see here. Let's do a new one. Try it one more time here. Let's see. Let's choose 4. Complete it. Create a new invoice. Okay. Oh, it doesn't have a dollar amount, but let's just try it anyway. Let's see. I don't know. Okay. Did create, here's this test user, came in. The service I had didn't have a dollar amount, but you can come in when I create the services, you create like I select a service that didn't have a dollar amount, but if I selected it, it would have created that. So that is, just the Intuit API. Then,
What's possible with that Intuit API? It sounds like you are syncing services as well as sending invoices. There's that, like, you can interact with anything inside QuickBooks?
everything's an API in the QuickBooks. The only thing we're mostly focused just on the invoicing.
Mhm.
So like in your cells, you have the product and services. So we call the API to hear those services. And then when you first bring up the app, you download the products and services that you have, and so they're in your app.
Well, so QuickBooks is the source of truth there for
Yeah.
the services. Cool.
I mean, we had both, but we decided to just go one direction to put it, because at the end of the day, we try to use like QuickBooks is the way we invoice our customers, and it's how we do our bookkeeping. So having everything there and then just syncing it up into the app. And that's the same thing that we're doing with the CRM. So the CRM does a good job of sending emails and messaging. So rather than reinvent the wheel, we're just kind of integrating the two things together, so that this tool really is just managing a crew, what they're doing, and trying to be more proactive on letting the customer know when we're done and things like that. And then the invoicing is always a lot of people doing like service businesses. If you've worked with small businesses, it's always time consuming. It's late, they do it, but it's due at the end of the month. And so getting those is always stressful. So trying to automate that. It also makes it so you could scale your business a lot better.
So is QuickBooks the one that sends the invoice then? Like you send an API request and then QuickBooks is the one that sends the invoice?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So that part's already, so the customer's already in there, and in QuickBooks, you can just send them an email and they just pay their invoice. Yeah. I probably won't go, the CRM is, so the way the CRM works is when you create like a member, it goes and creates, this is our CRM package. I created this one just earlier, but it doesn't do it. It puts it up in a queuing system and then queues it up, syncs it up every 5 minutes or so. So that way, if we're in the CRM and we're making updates, the app can pull that in. And also when you're in the app and you make a change, we just push it into here. So that's the CRM. I'm going to do a demo of that later at another time. Let's see.
Is the CRM primarily for just like messaging the customer then? Texting them updates?
Yeah, it's called HighLevel, and it integrates like with social media and things like that too. But it's mostly so keep track of our customer, and it's just mostly a communication tool. So email, text messaging, most things you'd probably do in a CRM package. Reminders. It has calendaring. So that's the other thing we're trying to integrate is like scheduling your crew and when they're going to go out. It is still kind of a manual process now. And so our thought is, well, let's put this in the app. So the crew gets the app. They know exactly what they're doing that day, where they're going. And also the customer knows, hey, they're going to be there on Friday. So, and if they wanted to change it, they could contact us through a text message and it would change this and then update it in the app is the goal. So let me get to the.
I don't know if this is a good time to ask this question, but could you describe, if you're going to do it later, that's fine, but like your overall architecture, like kind of how, if you draw an architecture diagram, you have like the front end, the app, and then like the back end, maybe like GraphQL here, you may have like Redis or something for caching, and then like how, like is the QuickBooks API connecting to your backend, and then you're talking to your backend via GraphQL, or like,
Yeah, I don't have a diagram to do that exactly, but yeah. So the front end is on the mobile. It's in Angular, Ionic. Everything talks to the NestJS middleware server, and then we use Mongo as our persistent layer, and then authentications to the CRM or to Intuit are all done through NestJS. So we don't do anything directly from the application straight to it. It did show this because I was already authenticated, but like when you go into Intuit the first time, kind of like with PayPal, it does a two-factor authentication will come up. You have to authenticate. It makes a webhook back to your server side. Here it goes just local and then authenticates, and that's how they handle that authentication part. I run this like I said, I do a lot of DevOps stuff. So I use Kubernetes. So I build these in containers and then run this in an EKS cluster. It's probably overkill for this application, but it's a lot of the stuff I do is also stuff I do in my consulting anyway. So kind of I like putting in there and trying to use the same tools for what I do on my day-to-day stuff.
Why did you choose Ionic and not Bootstrap or Ionic?
That's a good question. So one of the features of Ionic is it's been around for a few years now. Is it's made to build a mobile application. So you can take regular web technology that you make like a web page or like a Gmail or anything like that, Ajax type application. You can do it in the browser, but then you can run this in a mobile app without having to change your code. So that was for me, because what I wanted this to run on a mobile app, and I didn't want to write it in Android or Objective-C or anything like that. So that was the reason I chose it. Now with Ionic, you can pick the different frameworks. That's one of the benefits now is I chose Angular because I looked at this a while ago, and Angular was kind of the choice to make, but you could do it now in React or Vue or Stencil, right? So you can kind of pick where you want to do that.
And besides Ionic being mobile first, it's also with one set of code, it will detect if you're Android or Apple, and it will switch the UI to match the Apple standards for the Android standards. So it's all done with CSS, but they've done all that work for you. So yeah, every widget, every component they have has Android style and iOS style. So that's one of the things that it takes care of for you.
So just in conclusion, GraphQL can be beneficial for some projects. I think large projects like your Facebook with multiple development groups, having strongly typed schemas that define what your APIs are going to be, can probably be pretty beneficial. Standard REST is more popular, I think. And my conclusion now after doing both is I probably wouldn't mix them, and I'd probably just stick with REST and deal with the issues. I don't think it solved really any problems that we had anyway. So it was kind of an experiment, but it's cool to know. So any questions?
I'm curious to see some code. if there's a service file or something that shows the GraphQL calls.
Yeah.
So without getting proprietary or
no, there's
anything
nothing
like
really
that.
proprietary.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the GraphQL.
Schema definition.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, so
Do you want to control plus on that, or command plus, make it a little bigger?
yeah. Is that better?
Maybe one more. Yeah. There you go. Thanks.
Okay, so this is our NestJS code, right? And so everything that has like members our member objects use GraphQL. Things like auth don't, and you'll notice we have controllers, module, and a service. Anything that has a resolver is GraphQL. So you'd have like a schema that defines, this is where you get your type safety. So here's a member schema defining all the types and what they are and if they're required or not. And then you have a resolver that handles the different filtering. So here's how you do like the mutation with the create. And so it follows that syntax a bit, but again, it is using this, it's using this GraphQL library, which is Apollo internally. So member was one. Let's see. I think
So are those like at query, like on line 22? Is that a Nest thing, or that's Apollo?
Well, it's an Angular, makes it available. But
Well-
and I'm guessing.
so. This is a GraphQL annotation to make this a query.
Because this is the backend, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's not Angular.
yeah. So this is just Node, and this is the NestJS. So with that, this makes this a query, and like this is a mutation. So these are the different ways that here's a create, here's an update.
What are those called in Angular? Not annotations, they're just indicators.
Decorators, yeah.
Yeah, decorators. Just to help parse and define.
Yeah. Sorry, I still call them from Java stuff, so
I know.
everyone's got a different name for the same thing. But
Mhm.
let's see. Product similar.
What would that call to QuickBooks look like? It's hitting a GraphQL endpoint, and then it's making a REST call to.
So let's go to invoices. So invoices, we have invoices locally. So like we say, we stage the objects first.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to just create a work order and then send it. So it's kind of a process it first. A manager goes and looks at it and verifies everything's good, because we want to correct it before, if you get the hours wrong or something. We don't want to create an invoice and accidentally send it to the customer. So that's in the Intuit stuff. So Intuit stuff, this is just their REST APIs. That's the authentication stuff. And so we have a callback too. So when we call their APIs, we first have to authenticate, then they call back. We give them a URL when we register at the site, and then it calls back to make sure that you are the authorized person to connect. And in the app, you have to, it doesn't just maintain that session. So like when you're going to set it in, it's going to log in, kind of like maybe an eBay or a PayPal would be kind of thing. Get location, access code. Okay, here's where it transfers the invoices. So we're passing in our invoice, which is in a Mongo object. Find if they already have an invoice, and then and then our invoice has different line items. It's going to go through and create an invoice for each of the invoices that we selected. So we said that work order, you could select, the way we set up is to create a work order, and you can create multiple work orders for a member, and then you can create an invoice for every work order, or you could blend them all together and say, like, if you're mowing lawns for a month, maybe you have 4 entries, and you just select them and create one invoice. So essentially calls this and makes a REST API to QuickBooks. But I have run into some bugs there. It's not 100% baked yet, but. So anything else?
I have another question.
Yeah.
I know the presentation was kind of GraphQL, but I'm curious because you're a backend guy.
Yeah.
Like, if I could ask a question.
Sure.
It's related to your experience. I guess as a backend person, like looking at your application, like how scalable do you think it is right now? Like if you went from 1,000 to 10,000 to 100,000 users, like would you do stuff differently? Like are there limitations with Nest? Like how do you do that?
I haven't done a lot of load testing in Nest. I think my limitation would be like in the database. So right now I run everything as a container. So unlike DynamoDB or what's the Google Firestore or Firebase that's scaled, it's a service. Amazon has the same thing, and but it comes at a cost because it's a small application. I am putting it in its own Mongo database and in a container, and I put it in Kubernetes. So in EKS, I could scale out the NestJS stuff almost limitlessly. So because you can just put it, it's going to run in a pod, and then you could scale that out as you needed to. I think the limiting factor is going to be on the database. Now, if I use like Mongo's paid service or a Firestore or even DynamoDB from Amazon, then I think that limitation would go away. But it comes at a cost is the issue. But Thomas and I actually work on, so I do a lot of Java stuff and do more, performance testing in Java. And what I have liked about Nest and Node.js is how fast it is, So Java's really heavy, really memory intensive. And I find you can do a lot of things really quickly in Node and a really small footprint. So, but I can't say I've done a lot of load testing, but that's something I would like to try doing.
Maybe also a related question. If I could ask, how much does it cost to host it? Like if you're doing Kubernetes and like you have database and you have a server and like. Or like do you use AWS or?
I use AWS, and it's not. I mean, it's a lot cheaper than probably a business would pay, but EKS Kubernetes is not going to be cheap. I think for an enterprise, it's a good efficient way to scale it because you just use the EC2 instances that you need. But I'd say like my Amazon bill every month is coming up to $300 a month. So, but that's kind of the cost of doing it. There's probably cheaper options. Another option might be a little cheaper is ECS with Amazon. It's not Kubernetes, but it's their container service. I think one thing is it's a lot simpler. So if you just have an application and you want to put it, I'm totally sold on containers. And if we ever want to have a talk about that, containers are great. If you've done any type of deployment stuff, packaging something in a container is great. And ECS is Amazon's container service. So if you have a web app and you just want to scale it out, you can easily put it in ECS. And if you have a database, like if you already have like a RDS database in Amazon, then they kind of handle the scaling for you. So.
Is that 300 primarily because of Kubernetes or like the number of how big your database is, the data you're storing? Or?
Well, like I said, the database isn't very big, and the database is, I'm only using it in a container right now. So that could get bigger. So it's mostly Kubernetes. I mean, I have other things that I run too, but I'd say if you looked at the bill, Kubernetes is the biggest bill. But there's load balancers and other kinds of things. So there's definitely, if you're trying to host your own, there's cheaper ways to do it. If you want to learn AWS and get familiar with it, because like I mentioned, I do a lot of things in Terraform and stuff. So that's, for me, it's kind of it's what I do in my profession. So I like to be able to prototype things out first and then know them pretty well. So that's why I do it. This could be deploying a lot easier solutions, I'm sure.
Is there any difference between AWS and Azure? So I hear people they take a side. Is there any difference?
I think there is, but fundamentally they're the same. So you've got Azure, Google, AWS. I'd say AWS is the first one on the block, so they have the most services, but they're also probably the most expensive. But they're all pretty competitive. They all offer like a Kubernetes solution. I think the biggest complaint, at least on the DevOps side, because I don't know anyone that likes working in Azure, but that's probably because they work in Kubernetes, and and Azure's is Microsoft, so Windows stuff. So if you do Windows stuff, I think it's great. If you're doing a lot of cloud stuff just runs on Linux, that's not so good. Like I love developing on a Mac, and I hate developing on a Windows box. And I curse it every day I'm on it, because the command line stuff and the Docker stuff, DevOps stuff, it works most of the time, but not all the time. So, but that's kind of personal choice. Good questions, though.
Yeah, we'll have to see if someone like Ben want to present Azure backend for containerized web.
Ben, do you guys use Azure then?
Oh, no, Energy, everything is on-prem.
Oh, you're on-prem.
I have done significant research into Azure, and to summarize the AWS Azure debate, I'd say if you're already in the Microsoft ecosystem, Azure is going to feel more natural.
Yeah.
But in terms of features, I don't think I found anything that one can do the other can't.
Yeah. The one thing is, like, people often talk about they want to be able to move from one cloud. I think that never happens. You're like, once you're in the cloud, you're probably not leaving. And they have certain technology you're just going to be so used to, you won't move. Like Amazon's S3 buckets, they created those a long time ago, and I used those years ago, and they solved a really important part of if you wanted to scale out and not have to worry about where your compute resources were located. S3 buckets were fantastic. And that was like in 2008. We did something with those, and we were never moving off AWS after that. So I think people that do Kubernetes stuff, like Google probably has the best Kubernetes integration because they created it. They're the originators of it. So, and EKS is not quite as nice, but it's getting there. And they all have a little bit of their own. But yeah, kind of personal choice. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brett.
I was going to say there is it November 11th, 6 to 8 here. If you're interested in learning DevOps type stuff, there's a couple presenters coming in from KubeCon that are presenting that day, and I'll be here. So if you're interested in, what is DevOps, and come just ask some questions.
Yeah, we've talked about not having this meetup for the next 2 months, since our fourth Tuesday is right part of Thanksgiving, and one side
Christmas.
or the other,
Yeah.
just too close, and then into the holidays as well. But if anybody has anything to share, I'm willing to set up a virtual meetup over the next 2 months, schedule it, and we can we pretty much do what we've done here tonight online. If anybody has something that they want to present. Otherwise, we will be punting to January. And,
Or we all show up for this in November.
Yeah, you can come to this one.
Definitely this.
There'll be food here. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I noticed last week Utah JS. I think it was Utah JS. It was one of the big JS meetups. You know, they were looking for presenters as well, and they meet here as well.
Oh,
And so look for them on Meetup and in Slack. And
have you tried combining with them?
no,
Ever?
haven't.
Because it might, especially working presenters, it might be.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can almost combine and get a bigger
Yeah.
group here.
Yep. On as a side note, different note, I even thinking about seeing what I could do in South County. I live down in Payson, so I'm wondering what it's still going to be another year before MTech finishes their campus down there.
Yeah.
But once they do that, I think I'm going to start.
You gonna move down there?
I'm going to host, a more generic, general tech meetup down there, just to stay close to home and stuff. But then that would be the prime opportunity to move this content into Utah JS. But that's still a year away. I'm not in a rush. No, I know. No, I understand that. It's not to take the place of this. It's just to kind of start a new South County thing down there and push tech, get the demand for it so that MTech will create a web programming course down at that end of the county, because they're not planning to right now. We need to get a couple software companies in Payson, and then boom, there's a demand for programmers, and they will have the program in the school. But it's all needs driven. So any other questions about Ionic or MTech or anything we've talked about today? So we could go any direction. Okay. All right. We'll close up the stream.